How did you find your way to the financial services industry?
I really got lucky in that I was invited into the ED&F Man Commodities trainee program, and it just took off from there. But it wasn't something that I'd really planned or knew very much about.
What can you tell me about the ED&F Man program?
That was a very, very different time, as you can imagine. I only had one other woman friend who had just joined a company to trade precious metals options, just literally at the time when options were launched. And I had one other guy friend who had just joined ED&F Man as a coffee trader. So I was asked to join one of the trading desks on the oilseeds side. As a part of that, I attended all the trainee program. So it was classes in trading, classes in hedging. I want to say there was probably about 5 or 6 people, but no, women was not the feature.
Where did you go from there?
That business that I was in, which was Man Producten, got sold to a company in the Netherlands. And at that point, I was asked, well, what do you want to do? And I'd heard that there was a very strong, very impressive new boss in the coffee division. So I essentially said, well, I want to work for him, being ever brave and bold. And so eventually I got to meet him, and he was a fantastic character, cigar smoking Israeli. And he said to me, oh, I don't hire people in the UK. So I said, oh, okay, so I'll see you in the US. So he said, yes, yes, whatever. So at that time, I had a corporate Amex, so I booked a flight to go to New York and showed up at the front door. And he essentially said, it was at 120 Broadway, and he said essentially, well, what are you doing here? And I said, well, you told me you only hired people in the US, so I'm here. And he said, oh my goodness, well, go and sit over there. And then I had the good fortune of, so I sat over there, which was at the hedging desk with Laura Moore. And it just went from there. And I stayed with them for about 3 years. I was able to work on the hedge fund desk. It was just as oil was getting launched on the floor with Premier Man. So I had some opportunity to learn that. And then I also was able to fill in at the cocoa and sugar desks. So it was a really steep learning curve, but absolutely terrific. One of my funniest moments was that, of course, coming from London, I couldn't understand a word that was being said from all the floor guys. So I was then sent down to the floor for 3 months to learn. And the guys sort of stood around me in a circle and were very, very protective and fantastic. That was the Dapolito brothers. And anyone who came near me or breathed near me, they were like, get away from her, she's a client. And so it was a fantastic time. I went back upstairs. The head desk could then understand everything that was being said, because I was the caller across the room in those days to shout out all the prices and what was going on the floor. And so that lasted for 3 years. And then I went to work for one of Man's companies in Paris for a year on the Bourse de Commerce. And that was equally fun. I was mostly trading sugar arbitrage. At that time, we were still trading the FX. And then I sort of came to the realization that when you worked in France, you essentially had to wait for somebody to die before you could take their job or be promoted. And that didn't quite work for me. So I headed back to London and decided that since I was being presented with numerous roadblocks as to being a physical trader, given my fair sex, and clearly unable to travel to anywhere in South America because I was just a woman. So I changed and flipped and went over to the sell side and started at, I had 2 male partners, but, I think having spent 3 years in the US gave me a really fantastic base in order to better understand the clients, the market, what was required, very high service level. And it went very well. After I was able to get some significant clients. And after about a year in that, I joined at the time Laura Moore and Mike Nugent and became one of their partners. We had a pretty substantial coffee business as brokers.
Who were some of your mentors?
Ben Tagger, who was my boss in the coffee company, was just the most fantastic character and mentor, and said it how it was. And I think what I learned from him was just to grab opportunities and not sit around and wait. And he was also extraordinarily tough in terms of, if the position was off by, 3 tons, he would send us back to the drawing board. So I also learned, the importance of being very granular, very correct. Those are things that had deluded me up until that time. And so, I really learned a very strong sort of business ethic. He would also teach us things like, seems simple, but he would say, never say you don't know. Always say you'll find out. There were just very little sort of small things which made a great impression. And then, later on, I think that the next time I sort of really had strong mentors was when I got to Citi. So I was very fortunate in working with Ali Hackett, who again was an extraordinarily tough boss, but just very wise. And I think the biggest thing she taught me was, again, take opportunities, tough it out. There was no room for sort of playing the woman card, or if she looked at me and said, "Oh, you look a little bit tired. Have you been to the gym this morning?" And there was no question about sort of you're tired, sort of, do you need a few days off or anything like that. And then she also taught me a slightly different approach. She was the person that said, you can achieve these things without leaving dead bodies in your wake. And that was a very, very strong lesson as well. I had to rethink that. Tom Maharis was at the time the head of the investment banking area, sort of on the trading side. And Tom Maharis somehow took me under his wing and really sort of put me in his talent pool. And it was through him that I became a managing director, because essentially he said, there's a path, and these are the things you need to do. You need to network extensively. You need to make money for numerous areas of the firm. And at the end of the day, then it's a voting process. I'm quite good at following instructions, and went about trying to achieve those goals, and indeed became one of the quickest made women and a woman managing directors at Citi.
What was it like to be a pioneering managing director?
I was very excited about it. It was, I would say, a pretty rough journey in the early years being a woman in the business. You really had to suck it up and make some very big decisions about what you were going to get excited about and what you weren't. And what I did learn was walk around the wall. You don't need to walk through it. And so while, people sort of say, oh, you're a trailblazer and you're leading all these things, I think I just chose to find a path that did not burn bridges. And that was very important. We were in an all-male environment. Laura and I were really the only women. And at one point, when we wanted to move away from one of our male partners and become a broking unit on our own, we were essentially sat around a boardroom, and this was at Dean Witter, and told, well, who do you think we're going to support? You're a couple of women, and he's a guy. So you might as well forget this idea. Went into work the next morning, all our computers were shut down, and we were not granted any access. And then I took a very sort of background approach to that. And while I did get advice, and I would say, sort of certainly very formal advice, I did not choose to go the route of trying to sue anyone or sort of call anyone to the mat. We just got it resolved with some help in the background and then moved forward. And I found that there's been many instances when perhaps these days people would be, quite hot-headed and choose to go to HR and sue people and all of that. But at the time, I just felt like it was better to move forward, move around the wall. And I think that stood me in good stead, just taking a deep breath, moving on. Well, I'm not sure if it's because I'm a Gemini, but I absolutely love change. I embrace change. I love it. And I also want to continually learn. And I find change very exciting. And I also think that it's very important to surround yourself by not just younger people, but people know things that you don't know. So I've never been that egotistical in thinking that I know everything. What I think that I have learned is that if you are able to surround yourself by people with different skill sets and create a diverse team around you, it's extraordinarily successful.
What was it like to negotiate your fair share as a woman managing director?
It came to my attention that women MDs were not being paid on the same footing as some of our male peers, and that's an industry-wide problem, and it's a fairly complex problem because I don't necessarily think that many of the very large corporations have the wallet or choose to really put that right. And so again, I decided that I would give the opportunity to the company to fix it rather than try and get litigious and go to HR and create all sorts of a big mess. So I do think that for the most part, women are not great negotiators. And I would say personally, I'm a very bad negotiator for myself, but I'm very good at giving advice. So I try to sort of take a step back and really think it through. And on a very, very brave day, asked for a meeting with the management and explained that I had this had come to my attention and I would like to give them an opportunity to fix it rather than my go outside the firm. And I would very much appreciate hearing back from them within I think I said within a 2-month period. And I also made it clear that this was a complaint. And I think it's important that you make it a formal complaint because then it gives your management a clear path to have to take action. And that was, I think, very much appreciated because no one had really dared to raise this unless they were prepared to get fired, leave the company, or go and take outside advice. I think they were most appreciative of having the opportunity to take action, and it was a fairly favorable outcome. I would say a very favorable outcome, and they did fix it within, I want to say, within about a year.